actually located in the low altitude part of the reserve, and it's really forms the core of the reserve now. So it's where the lodge is situated, and the conservation centre, and the volunteer and search accommodation, that kind of thing. And back in 2004, the area looked very similar to the photo that's shown there from the 1980s. It was largely rough pasture. Most of the low hills were deforested, and there were a few tiny brooks running through that area, but no significant areas of water. But prior to the 1980s, it was actually the location of a swamp, and the swamp is made up of types of trees called tababuya, and it's a very, very endangered habitat now. So a lot of the lowlands used to be in the Atlantic forest used to be covered in this tababuya swamp, and just prior to the 1980s, that was the case at this place at REGUA as well. So, but then the swamp was drained, the trees were felled, and in its place there was agriculture. So there was some manioc and cassava being grown, and also a lot of pasture as well. And when I arrived at REGUA in 2006, it looked pretty much the same as the photo on the right there. And what it was is the Nicholas and Raquel at REGUA decided that they wanted to restore, or partly restore if they could, some of this tababuya wetland, but also create some other habitat as well. So some open lakes and some reed beds and that kind of thing. And they had just started the year before Rachel and I first went to REGUA, and the area was still largely dominated by pasture and by agriculture, but there had been a small area of lakes created as well, and there was a hide that had been put up, so you could actually see some good birds from the hide as well. But there had been very little reforestation. It was mainly creating the wetlands, so it was still very open. And when we were there in 2006, we started planting some more trees around the area, and a few years later, Nicholas and Raquel added another large area of lake to the wetland as well, which is the area that's shown in the photo labelled for 2011. And you can see in this photo that actually there's been a lot more reforestation around those lakes as well. And now the hillside from where these photos were taken, it's actually very difficult to get a photo looking over that area now, because that hill has also been reforested. So it's actually very difficult for us to get later photos showing what the wetland looks like now. But it's actually a series of lakes and rivers with areas of reed bed, but also some tababuya swamp as well. We've actually managed to plant some tababuya, and it's taken. So we're really pleased about that. So the area is a little bit different from what it used to be, in the past, which is mainly swamp, and it's now much more of a mosaic of different habitat types. And there's been well over 200 species of bird now recorded just at wetland. It's absolutely phenomenal. So
that's great.
That's bird watching.
Yeah, I just want to sort of remind people again. So 1980s to 2011. So that's 10 years ago. So you can imagine what it looks like now. So that's amazing, and of course it was all down to this type of thing, which is reforestation. We're all used to hearing deforestation, so hearing reforestation is actually, it's a bit of a godsend. So talk us through how this happens. And I know before we sort of start recording, we were talking about sort of how you work with the locals, and I think that's absolutely key. So if you can touch on that as well, that would be great.
Yeah, so reforestation is one of the key objectives of REGUA. What we're trying to do is not just protect the existing fragments of forest in the Guapiaçu Valley, but also we're trying to buy areas of land that also include deforested areas too. And by reforesting those areas of land, you can then reconnect these forest fragments, which creates a much, much more healthy ecosystem, plus expands the area of forest that's protected. And so the way we reforest is we collect the seeds from over 150 species of Atlantic forest trees, most of which are pioneer species, but some are also successional species as well. And we plant these, we actually take the seeds and we germinate them in our own nursery. which is located right at the entrance of REGUA, and the nursery staff are all locals, so they know the forest really well. So we employ locals as rangers, and the rangers collect the seeds from the forest, bring them back to the nursery. And then we've got Mauricio, who's in charge of the nursery, and he lives in the local community. And he then germinates the seeds. Once they reach a certain size, he replants them into little seed packets that are then ready to take out into the field for replanting when they reach a certain size. So, and what we try to do is time the reforestation for the wet season at REGUA. So we plant them from around about December through to about March, which is the wet season, and that helps us keep them irrigated and watered because it's a very hot environment. And we've got quite a high success rate of reforestation. It's over 80%, so of the saplings survive. So, but it takes a lot of work. We also have to employ local people to manage things like ants, which will kill off very young saplings as well, to keep an eye on that kind of thing. And just the watering alone is a real, it's quite a labour-intensive activity, and it's something that a lot of people get involved with at REGUA. So REGUA is now the second largest employer in the Guapiaçu Valley. So we employ around 35 staff. And in the tree planting season, we employ even more people because we need more people to plant the trees. So it's another way another way really that the locals really benefit from the reforestation work. It's something that without local support we just couldn't achieve.
And of course all of this needs funding, and that brings me on to my future holiday. So you have a lodge there. You sort of touched on it earlier, and clearly it will attract sort of people like bird watchers, like anybody interested in nature. Like certainly, if you're a moth type like I am, it's got to be on your bucket list. But you can stay there and you can get involved. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the lodge is located right in the middle of the reserve. It's got 10 rooms and sleeps up to 18 people. So it's quite a small lodge. It's not one of these, really large sort of hotels or anything like that. It's got quite a nice villa-like atmosphere, and it's great for anyone who's interested in wildlife. So so many species of birds are available just on the trails, which are all marked from the lodge. So you can walk out on your own if you like, or you can hire one of REGUA's guides if you want to be guided. But if you're interested, like you say, in insects or orchids, or we've had people interested in reptiles, amphibians from all over the world come to stay. And it's an ideal base for any kind of natural history. Plus, it's a really good place to actually learn about the conservation as well. So Nicholas and Raquel often come up to the lodge and give presentations about REGUA and what we've been doing over the last year or so, and what we hope to do in the future, and show some really good before and after photos of how patches of areas looked before we restored them. So like you showed earlier, how the wetland area looks when you're at the lodge. It's hard to imagine that just 15 years ago that was just pasture and agriculture with barely a tree in sight. And people are amazed when they see those photos. But it's also from the lodge, it's easy to go down and look at the nursery and the conservation centre to see the researchers. We have local researchers that come from, say, the universities in Rio and further afield, studying all kinds of things from spiders, reptiles, amphibians, and quite often they will come back and they will have say fish from the wetland in tanks that you can look at that they're studying. It's just an amazing atmosphere to actually see the research and the conservation that's going on. So yeah, I highly recommend going, which is why I've been going for every year pretty much since 2006.
Excellent. And just to end the pictures, a reminder that at the beginning you mentioned that is the view from the lodge. Earlier you're telling me that the trees had grown so high now that you've actually had to build a platform, which is a few seconds walk from the lodge, that you can climb up to still see that view, which is immense.
Yeah, it's amazing. So when I first arrived at REGUA, this was the view from the veranda, but now the reforestation's been so successful, much of that view is hidden from the garden itself. So what we've done is we've built a canopy tower just on the edge of the lodge, and that is actually the view from the tower, looking right over the reserve. So the reserve goes right up to 2,000 meters, which is the peaks in the distance that you can see there, and also quite hidden in that photo, you've got the wetland as well. So you can see things like egrets coming into roost in the evening and that kind of thing from the tower. But the tower is also great for birding. I mean, because you're high up and you're at canopy level, you get great views of tanagers and banana quits and trogons and all kinds of rainforest birds that are quite difficult to see without craning your neck. So it's a really nice place to spend a morning or an evening, just watching the birds come through, and also with a great view as well. It's brilliant.